We said something shocking. Taxes ought to be reduced, not raised. We cut the tax rates for the working folks of America. We indexed taxes, and that stopped bracket creep, which kicked average wage earners into higher tax brackets when they had only received a cost of living pay raise. And we initiated reform of the unfairness in our tax system. And what do you know? The top 5% of earners are paying a higher percentage of the total tax revenue at the lower rates than they ever had before. And millions of earners at the bottom of the scale have been freed from paying any income tax at all. That was our change. So together, we pulled out of a tailspin and created 17.5 million good jobs. That's more than 250,000 new jobs a month, every month, for 68 consecutive months. America is working again, just and just since our 1984 convention, we have created over 11 million of those new jobs. Now, just why would our friends on the other side want to change that? Why do they think putting you out of work is better than putting you to work? New homes are being built. New car sales reach record levels. Exports are starting to climb again. Factory capacity is approaching maximum use. You know, I've noticed they don't call it Reaganomics anymore. As for inflation, well, that too has changed. We changed it from the time it hit 18% in 1980 down to between 3.5% and 4%. Interest rates are less than half of what they were. In fact, nearly half of all mortgages taken out on family homes in 1986, and more than a third of those in 1987, were actually old loans being refinanced at the new, lower rates. Young families have finally been able to get some relief. These too were our changes. We rebuilt our armed forces. We liberated Grenada from the communists and helped return that island to democracy. We struck a firm blow against Libyan terrorism. We've seen the growth of democracy in 90% of Latin America. The Soviets have begun to pull out of Afghanistan. The bloody Iran-Iraq war is coming to an end, and for the first time in 8 years, we have the prospects of peace in Southwest Africa and the removal of Cuban and other foreign forces from that region. And in the 2,765 days of our administration, not 1 inch of ground has fallen to the communists. Today, thank you. Today, we have the first treaty in world history to eliminate an entire class of U.S. and Soviet nuclear missiles. We're working on the Strategic Defense Initiative to defend ourselves and our allies against nuclear terror. And American and Soviet relations are the best they've ever been since World War II. And virtually all this change occurred and continues to occur in spite of the resistance of those liberal elites who loudly proclaimed that it's time for a change. They resisted our defense buildup. They resisted our tax cuts. They resisted cutting the fat out of government. And they resisted our appointments of judges committed to the law and the Constitution. And it's time for some more straight talk. This time it's about the budget deficit. Yes, it's much too high, but the president doesn't vote for a budget, and the president can't spend a dime. Only the Congress can do that. They blame the defense increases for the deficit. Yet defense spending today in real dollars is almost exactly what it was 6 years ago. In a 6-year period, Congress cut defense spending authority by over $125 billion, and for every $1 reduction in defense outlays, they added $2 to domestic spending. Now, if they had passed my first budget, my first spending plan in 1982, the cumulative outlays and deficits would have been $207 billion lower by 1986. Every single year I've been in office, I have supported and called for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. And the liberals have said no every year. I called for the line item veto, which 43 governors had, to cut fat in the budget, and the liberals have said no. Every year I've attempted to limit their wild spending sprees, and they've said no. They would have us believe that runaway budget deficits began in 1981 when we took office. Well, let me tell you something. The fact is, when they began their war on poverty in the middle 60s, from 1965 through 1980, in just those 15 years, the budgets increased to 5 times what they had been, and the deficits went up to 52 times what they had been before their war on poverty. Now, don't we know that if they're elected, their answer will be the one they've relied on in the past, and that is higher taxes. The other party has controlled the House of Representatives for 52 out of the last 56 years. They've controlled the Senate also for 46 of those years. Where we really need a change is to elect Republican majorities in both houses. And then George Bush can have a team that will protect your tax cuts, keep America strong, hold down inflation and interest rates, appoint judges to preserve your rights, and yes, reduce the budget deficit. Early in the first term, we set out to reduce federal regulations that had been imposed on the people, on business, and on local and state governments. Today, I'm proud to say that we have eliminated so many unnecessary regulations that government-required paperwork imposed on citizens, businesses, and other levels of government has been reduced by an estimated 600 million man-hours of paperwork a year. And George was there. You haven't heard it all yet. George Bush headed up that task force that eliminated those regulations. In 1980 and before, it took 7 weeks to get a Social Security card. Now it takes 10 days. It only takes 10 days to get a passport. It used to take 43 days. It took 75 days to get an export license. Now it's only 17 days, and for some countries only 5. It took over 100 days to process a claim for a Department of Housing and Urban Development Title I loan. 100 days. It now takes less than 1/4 of that, 22 days. I think these specifics suggest there is a new level of competent management in the departments of our government. George played a major role in everything that we have accomplished in these 8 years. Now, early on, we had a foreign policy problem. Our NATO allies were under the threat of Soviet intermediate-range missiles, and NATO had no equivalent deterrent. Our effort to provide a deterrent, Pershing and ground-launched cruise missiles, on the NATO line resulted in political problems for our NATO allies. There was objection on the part of many of their people to deployment of our missiles. George represented us in Brussels with the heads of the NATO countries, and they agreed when he finished to take the missiles.